Hello and welcome to Round the Table, your slow TV radio podcast from the meeting point, broadcasting not only to Bilbao but throughout the world. And in today's programme we've got some What's the Difference questions for you. We've also got this week's pronunciation problems. We have an interesting word, and this week the interesting word is the word party. And then we'll be on with our discussion, and our discussion topic of the week was fear and loathing. But before we begin, we have to have a special announcement. And we have two special announcements. The first of which is that this channel now has 1,500 subscribers. The second announcement is that we have opened up a new YouTube channel called Round the Table. And from now on, all of our podcasts will be appearing on that channel. The Meeting Point English channel will only be used for the grammar and pronunciation videos. So if you want to follow our regular Sunday podcast, from this week on you will need to find another channel called Round the Table. Go there and subscribe. Don't forget, it costs nothing to subscribe. You don't have to pay or anything like that. So we look forward to seeing you there. Meanwhile, on with the show. So in today's What's the Difference, we've got different ways of killing people, or killing animals more precisely. So we've got the verb to kill, okay? The words that came up in the conversation this week were slaughter, slaughter, and sacrifice. Sacrifice. Slaughter is when you kill animals, okay? There's the place where the animals go to be killed is called a slaughterhouse, sometimes called an abattoir, if you want to use the posh French word, but the good old Anglo-Saxon compound is slaughterhouse. Slaughter, it rhymes with daughter, okay? Slaughter, daughter have the same pronunciation, but not laughter. You see, laughter is quite different. So slaughter is usually used for killing animals, though it can be used figuratively sometimes if there is a war zone, for example, and people from one village go into another village and kill all the people. Sometimes that is also referred to as slaughter, mass killing with lots of blood. But usually slaughter is how we kill animals. In the slaughterhouse. Sacrifice is something quite different. Sacrifice is only used for killing animals for religious purposes. A sacrificial goat, for example, or you might sacrifice a chicken to your gods. We also have a metaphorical sacrifice. In life, if you, for example, you want to pay for your child's education, and education is more important than taking holidays, so you might make certain sacrifices in life and not buy the things that you would like to buy in order to pay for your child's education, for example. So that is making sacrifices in life. And while we're talking about verbs for killing, let's talk about killing people. Why not? Murder is when you kill another person. Murder. But we don't use the word assassinate. Assassinate in English is very specific. You can't assassinate normal people. You can only assassinate kings and queens and presidents and the Pope. I think there was an assassination attempt on the Pope a few years ago. Well, many years ago now. But important people can be assassinated. But the likes of you and I, we cannot be assassinated because we're far too common. We can only be murdered. So that's the difference between murder and assassinate. Another one that came up in conversation this week: marks, grades, and notes. Marks and grades are what you get in school. There might be a small difference. I would say a grade would be like if they give you a letter to show how well you've done, A, B, C, D, or E, or F in the case of Bart Simpson. I think marks would be more like a percentage, or you score 25 out of 30 or something like that. But marks and grades are basically what you get in school. They're not called notes, okay? Notes are little messages that you leave for yourself to remind you to do things. Or we use notes in music. We have musical notes, which in English are A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We don't use that do, re, mi system. So that's another topic, really. So that's the difference between notes, marks, and grades. The next one, which could be a pronunciation thing, but we've got sign and signal. You notice the G is pronounced in signal, but not in sign. The difference, I think, a sign, imagine a sign in the street telling the traffic or the drivers of the cars what to do and what not to do. That would be a sign. A sign gives information. The difference between that and a signal, I think signals change. At least the ones in the street do. If you are approaching a railway line, for example, and there's a sign, or rather I should say a signal, tells you when the train is coming, and it can either allow you to pass over the train track, or it tells you to stop. I think that is a signal. I think signals change. You get them on motorways. That tells you about speed restrictions or danger ahead, that there's been an accident or bad weather or something. I think that would be a signal. Signals change, I think, and signs don't. Even though we do talk about sign language, if you cannot speak and you use your hands to communicate, that is called sign language. So maybe they do change sometimes. Another connected word, of course, is signature. When you sign your name, you sign your signature. So the pronunciation is quite different. Okay, let's look at some pronunciation problems. A word that came up this week because we were talking about fear, we had words like height and hate. So height, you have a fear of heights. That word is pronounced height. If you dislike something, the word is hate. I hate spiders, for example. Height, hate. And while we're doing this, let's look at the other words in the set. What about heat? Heat, from the word hot. So you've got heat and hot. And hit. Hit. H-I-T is hit. Heat is longer than hit. Then you've got a pair of hat and hut. Hat. Hut. Those two words are very similar. A lot of people can't hear the difference. Don't worry too much if you can't hear the difference, but to me it's a big difference. Hat goes on your head. Hut is a little house made of wood. Hut. So hat, when you say hat, you have to smile more. Okay, it's more tense in your cheeks, and your tongue is touching your bottom teeth. If you want to say hut with a U, you relax your face a little bit more, and your tongue moves back a tiny amount, and you say hut. Hat, hut. There's also the word hoot, which is the noise that an owl makes. Hoot. There's heart, heart, and hurt. Heart, hurt. So there's a whole collection of words there with different vowel sounds in between. Height, hate, heat, hit, hat, hut, hoot, hot, heart, and hurt. They're all different. And this week's interesting word is the word party. A lot of people think of a party being some kind of celebration, but really it refers to a group of people. The group of people often come together to celebrate something, but really a party is a group of people. If you think of a political party, this is why we talk about the Labour Party, the Conservative Party. It's not because they're all drinking and celebrating. Well, in the case of some politicians, they might be. Yes, the political parties, scandals of the past. The party is the group of people. We also have a search party. If somebody is lost and we have a group of people from the town go looking for those people in the mountains, we send out a search party to look for them. That is the group of people. There is also a rescue party that goes up into the mountains to find the lost climber. You can also have a coach party. A group of people that go on holiday together in a coach is a coach party. And you can also have a wedding party. Of course, there is a celebration involved, but really a wedding party is a group of people who are going to celebrate a wedding. You often hear party in legal terminology, especially in things like insurance. You can have third-party insurance for your car, which I think means that somebody else is allowed to drive your car and they are covered. So you have different parties in contracts. So that is what a party is. It's a group of people. It's not a celebration, though we often use it in that context. So, this week's topic was called Fear and Loathing.
Fear and loathing? What's that?
Loathing. You know what fear is, yeah?
Well,
Fear's
yeah.
okay, but loathing. Loathing is like to loathe something, is like to hate something, despise something. The reason I called the section Fear and Loathing is because there was a film a few years ago. There was a book originally, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Oh.
By, I think it was Hunter S. Thompson was the author.
Never heard of it.
Well, there was a film as well with Nicolas Cage, I believe.
There's a song like Nicolas Cage.
There is a song about Nicolas Cage, and Cages came up in conversation this week, actually. But I'll save the difference between Cage and jail for next week, I think.
Oh.
Anyway, that's another topic. Let's get back on the task. Fear and loathing we were discussing in class this week.
So what are people scared of then?
Well, we went through the whole list of phobias, because there are hundreds of those things. Phobia, claustrophobia, which I think I have a bit of that. I don't like being in very small spaces. And the fear of heights. And everybody thinks it's...
Vertigo.
Everybody thinks it's vertigo, but it's not. It's acrophobia, I think. Acrophobia. Vertigo is actually a medical condition. Vertigo is something that's wrong inside your ear. And it upsets your balance.
Yeah.
And you can take medication for it.
Yeah, but I guess because if it affects your balance when you are in the heights,
Yeah.
it makes you feel a bit uncertain.
And I think there was a film by Alfred Hitchcock called Vertigo.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of fixed the idea in people's minds that vertigo is a fear of heights.
Yeah.
But a fear of heights, it's called acrophobia, I think. And that is like in your head. Whereas vertigo is actually a physical thing. It's not a mental thing. It's a physical condition.
Yeah. Do you think it's okay that you can treat the phobias by confronting them? Yeah? Is this way to...
Yeah, some people do, don't they? If they have a fear of snakes, for example, which I don't think is a big problem, because you don't really come across snakes very often, do you?
No, if you live here.
No, I saw one in the park one day, but then you should be afraid of snakes. Some of them are dangerous. It's a sensible thing, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
If they can kill you, nothing wrong with being frightened of things that kill you.
Yeah.
It's like saying, I've got a fear of alligators or something.
Yeah.
Like, well, why not?
Yeah.
And I suppose heights is quite a natural thing to be frightened of, really, because you can fall off tall things and die.
Yeah, I guess we are programmed to not be scared of dangerous things.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll be always taking risks. And
But some of them are, because I think a phobia, in the definition of phobia, is a extreme fear or irrational. I think the word is irrational fear.
Yeah.
So if you've got a fear of beards, for example, or clowns, there's all kinds of things you can be afraid of.
Yeah.
There's also panophobia,
Which is?
fear of everything.
Oh. Well.
Just the general fear. You can't do anything if you've got panophobia. Yeah, so we discussed all those phobias. We were discussing xenophobia, xenophobia and racism, and why we got a lot of right-wing governments, or at least maybe not governments, but there's a lot of voting for right-wing politicians these days in most European countries. It's on the rise, as they say. And we were wondering if it means that people are more racist now than in the past. Because we like to think that we're not, because we're much more culturally diverse, aren't we? But then we got this rise in right-wing politics.
Well, but I think it's the message they are sending and saying that immigration is bad. And people, that's easy, very simple to understand, and that's what people get.
Yeah.
So they don't like it. But then if you talk to people individually, they are okay. They always say if those immigrants come and work and pay their taxes, they are okay with that.
Yeah.
I think it's the message they send, like, linking violence and with immigration.
Yeah, I think another of the problems is that, people make the link, and there's also a decline in standards in most European countries. People are not very well off these days compared to how people were maybe 20 years ago. The quality of life for a lot of people isn't as good as it used to be. And when things change, they look for something else that's changed. And if there's more immigration and I'm not as well off as I used to be, they see that one must be the cause of the other. And they're not necessarily connected at all. In fact, in some countries, they say that the immigration is what they need for the economy. It actually helps the economy.
Well, in most of them, in Europe nowadays.
Because they always say, immigrants just come and they don't do anything, and they're lazy and they take all our money or whatever. But in actual fact, in most countries, the immigrant population is much harder working than the indigenous population. And they're not coming and just using the hospital beds and all the other stuff that people blame them on. It's totally an irrational view, really. But there are certain politicians who will emphasise, there's always going to be stories of someone that, exploits the system. But they over-exaggerate that sometimes for their own political ends. Or maybe it's just that some people see the world in a very different way. It's hard to say what's true these days.
I guess that politicians, they know about the fear of the unknown and the effect that has on people, so they play with that.
Well, it's very easy to exploit fear. It's a very emotive thing. If you can put fear in people, it's the same as all the language that's used when talking about immigration. They're very specific in the language, and it's designed to instill fear in the mind. And once you trigger fear in your amygdala, in your brain, because I read a book about brains, it's in your amygdala. And once you trigger that fear instinct, then every time you think of that, you will associate it with the fear. So once you've put it into people's minds that immigration is dangerous, it's very difficult for them to change their opinion.
And once you've triggered that fear, then you are not being rational, are you? That's very instinctive.
Yes. Instinctive. Instinctive. Yeah, but then people are not as rational as we like to think we are. I think the idea of being rational human beings is an oxymoron. That's what it is. No such thing as rational human beings. We're very irrational, and I don't think we really understand why we feel the things we do, why we make the decisions we do, and it's very easy to exploit these kind of fears. What about that question that I mentioned last week? Hair on the head is often a beautiful thing, but hair in your food is disgusting. I was going to explain it, wasn't I? Well, hair on your head can be a beautiful thing, because if you think about it, most of our concepts of beauty and what is attractive and what attracts us to people of the opposite sex is basically what makes a good breeding partner. Yeah, so a woman likes to find a man who's like fairly big and strong, who can hunt and defend the family or whatever. And also, your hair, if you've got long hair and it's like shiny and good looking hair, it's because it's a sign of health.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, it's same as your eyes. Like, if you're unhealthy, it shows in your eyes. So if you've got bright, sparkly eyes, it's a sign of health. If you've got good skin, it's a sign of good health. And if you've got hair in good condition, it's a sign of good health. So it's bound to be an attractive thing.
Yeah.
Hair in your food is quite disgusting. My theory is that hair is very difficult to digest. It takes a long time to break down, even if you, like, when they dig up people who've been dead for hundreds of years, sometimes the hair is still there. They found some really, really old hair in graves and things for hundreds of years ago. And if you digest hair, if you eat hair, but you can get a fur ball inside, can't you? Like, you see them in the newspaper sometimes. Every few years you get the story of the girl who used to chew her hair, and she gets a big fur ball, the size of a rugby ball.
Well, that's really big.
Well, that's what I read somewhere. But if you get hair inside you, it's very difficult to digest, and it can knot up your, it could tie up your digestive system and eventually kill you, I suppose. Whereas other animals like cats, they have fur balls, but they cough them up. And I suppose cats lick themselves all the time, and they've evolved a way of processing hair, so they cough it up. And like owls, at least owls do it. I don't know if other birds of prey do it, but they cough out bones and fur.
Okay, yeah.
They got a way of separating it in the stomach. So they eat a mouse, it all goes in their stomach, they churn it all around, and then all the fur and bones gets turned into a little pellet, and they cough it out and spit it on the floor.
Okay.
And I don't know how they managed to do that, but that's what they've evolved to process hair and bones. But we can't digest hair, and I think historically, if you go back to our ancient ancestors, people who just ate hair died, and people that had an aversion to hair survived. So we've developed this idea that hair near food is quite disgusting.
It's funny how we have, all this technology and all this modern world, but we are still very primitive, aren't we?
We like to think we're civilized and advanced, but we're just cavemen in a technological world. That sounds like a song, doesn't it? We were talking about various types of disgust. Food came up a lot because we mentioned last week when we were talking about eating habits.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking about things that you like, things you don't like, things you would never eat. And then we came back to the same topic this week, because here in Spain, not everybody, but it's still quite common for people to eat snails. It's quite a Christmas tradition for some people.
Yeah.
But if you mention eating insects, people go, oh no, that's disgusting. But I'm sure there are more countries in the world eating insects than countries that eat snails. I would guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think in Asia it's quite popular, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it seems like it's the future.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for the amount of proteins
Yeah.
they have. And
Well, you can take the legs off, can't you? Like people imagine that, like, all the legs on a beetle or something.
well, I don't know, but if they are fried and you don't know, because it's the image, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah.
But we have langoustines and we're
Yeah.
very happy.
If you look at langoustines and prawns and things like that,
Yeah.
if you stop and look at them, they're quite disgusting, really.
Yeah.
We just think they're lovely because whatever you're brought up with
Yeah.
is kind of normal for you,
Mm.
and everybody thinks that they're the normal ones.
Yeah.
You know, but I suppose everybody thinks that.
Yeah.
Whatever you're accustomed to is normal for you, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean it's normal in the world. It's just the world that you've been brought up in, and by a matter of luck, you just happen to have been born in a certain country where people have given you certain food from a young age, and you think it's normal, but it might not be for other people.
And I'm sure if people didn't know they were insects, and you just spot them, like...
Well, some of the experiments they've been doing is to get these insects like mealworms and things like that. I don't know what they are. If you've got a pet lizard, you give them mealworms. They're a little grub thing. But they were experimenting with sort of toasting them and grinding them into flour. So instead of like a wheat flour, you got this high protein flour, but then you could use it for making biscuits, but they'd be very high protein biscuits.
Yeah.
So there are lots of ways of eating insects, yeah. You don't have to have some little creature with legs and eyes looking at you.
And it's also funny, like this myth, I think, that Chinese eat dogs or cats or I don't know. But then again, we also eat rabbits and chickens and...
Yeah. Well, they often say that people in these other countries eat dogs, but I think it would be a very rare thing. Because dogs normally eat meat. Yeah. Unless you've got a vegetarian dog, there's not really any point in raising a dog to eat. Because if you've got an animal that eats meat, it's much more economical for you to eat the meat rather than give it to a dog and then eat the dog.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be losing out eventually, aren't you? Because you're going to give it a lot more meat than you're going to get from the dog.
Yeah.
So what's the point in... I suppose if you're desperate, you can eat a dog, but I don't think it's that common, really. I think there are some countries where they might eat a dog. It's like horses. In some countries, people think it's disgusting to eat a horse, but they're quite happy to eat a cow.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
Yeah, but you don't get any... People don't eat horses in England. But in
France they do.
In France and Belgium, they eat a lot of horse. Well, a lot. I don't know if it's a lot.
Well,
it's
and
probably not
here,
that much.
Because you see in the market they sell horse meat.
We got some once in Lyon, didn't we? Had a horse steak, but if I didn't know, if I hadn't bought it in a horse meat shop, I wouldn't have known if someone gave it to me.
I think maybe it's also related to close animals, like the relationship between humans and dogs.
Yeah.
And just imagine eating a dog is be like eating your best friend.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe it's that association.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. Cats and dogs, we have them as pets.
Yeah.
And people don't like the idea of eating them, but there's nothing wrong with it. If you eat, there's lots of other animals that we're quite willing to eat. But we have these strange prejudices for some reason. And we think people in other countries that eat different animals, we think they're crazy. Or if they don't eat something.
Yeah.
Some countries, they don't eat pigs, which for them is quite rational. And they think we're disgusting for eating pigs. And we think they're strange because they don't. But, pigs, there's lots of reasons why people don't eat pigs, actually. Because there's lots of illnesses that you can get from pig meat if you're not careful. Yeah. Anyway, so eat what you like. So don't let anyone tell you whether you're right or wrong. It's all our own prejudices. Talking animals, we also had conversation about why people have snakes and spiders and things as pets.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's quite a weird thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Why is that?
Well, we don't know. We didn't actually come to any conclusions. We always have more questions than answers. But we just discussed those people and who does it. And I suppose people just find it interesting. Because we were saying, like, you can't treat them as pets. You can't take it for a walk or anything, can you?
Yeah.
You don't they don't sit on your lap while you're watching TV.
Yeah.
And then we said, yeah, but people have aquariums. We don't think that's strange.
Yeah.
You don't take the fish out and cuddle it. Well, I think that's all we've got to say on the topic of fear and loathing. Next week, our discussion is on the topic of work. A nice, sensible conversation next week. A good standard conversation. Work. There's a little bit of vocabulary that we have to look at next week. Got some good what's the difference things coming up related to work. And don't forget to go to the new YouTube page called Round the Table, because the Meeting Point English will only be used for videos about grammar and pronunciation from now on. We're going to move all of the podcasts to a different channel called Round the Table. So go there and subscribe. It costs nothing. So we'll see you on the other channel. Have a good week. Till next week.
Bye.
Bye.